Today we've presented a World War II scenario, the Battle for Schmidt, which was also an incredible battle. The U.S. suffered over 33,000 casualties. It was the longest single campaign ever undertaken by the American military. And there's a lot of threads of perseverance, a lot of the same flavor of the story in the Battle for Schmidt and in the fort story itself.
My father served in World War II in the Pacific. What we represent is the European theater. What we do here with the European theater, it's a whole different level. Obviously, it's a whole different geographical area, and it's been very enlightening. There's so many people today that have forgotten what it was like in World War II and World War I. Public events like today's event here at Fort Mifflin, it's a nice way for them to come out to get a really good hands-on interactive look at all the World War II items. They can come out to events like this. They can handle most of the weaponry used back in that time. They can talk to reenactors who have a really good grasp on the history of that time. Their takeaway will be a much better understanding of events and what the life was like for the average infantryman during the war. A lot of what you see in a lot of movies, it's very polished and very clean, but you don't get to know the bits and pieces.
The people here are, they're so good that it makes me drive 350 miles, to come to events like this, and it's absolutely worth it. And it's just because it's so much fun, and it's such a rewarding experience to be able to participate with this group.
A lot of the war movies that you've seen that I've seen over my many years, don't really accurately represent a lot of what we found out. Now, my father, as with many of the World War II vets, never really talked about the war. Up until he passed away, I knew very little. It wasn't until he passed away that I found memorabilia and was able to do some research on his background and where he served. With all history, it's just very important to remember where you came from, how you got to a position of where you are. And these types of events, it's a good way to either kickstart your learning or to really remember, what you learned in school.
And interestingly, people associate this history in the city of Philadelphia with the Revolutionary War, but it actually is so much more than that. And Fort Mifflin is really excited to be able to present those other stories that people don't necessarily think of when they're in Philadelphia, because history happened right here all the way through World War II.
At Fort Mifflin, we carry on a number of history programs, beginning with the siege of Fort Mifflin that took place here in 1777, defending the fort against the British fleet coming up the river to protect Philadelphia, which was British occupied at the time.
Fort Mifflin is probably one of the most heroic historic sites you've never heard of. It was a British victory in the fall of 1777, but the fact that it took them so long to achieve it is really what allowed Washington the time to establish his winter quarters at Valley Forge. The fort went on to serve until 1954 when it was decommissioned, at which point it was one of the longest serving military installations in the country.
Fort Mifflin is a historic place, and it's important to us to keep it alive because the battle that took place here, men actually died. They gave their lives to defend our freedom that we have today.
It's important for everybody to know the history, especially of their country, to realize the sacrifices and what it took to get us to where we are today. If you forget history, it's bound to repeat itself. And these are types of things that we don't want to have repeated. So it's really important that people, think about the history of their country, and especially the conflicts.
We keep history alive at Fort Mifflin. Fort Mifflin, like I said, it's my history, and I got to keep it alive. We have to keep it alive because it's important to us that it not crumble down and be neglected. And I think everybody should be aware of the surroundings they have, the history we have, and Fort Mifflin is a gem not quite discovered yet.